This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the bottom feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, and welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this Best of Bob Lowry, I'm going to talk to Bob about different problems you have when you're starting up a pool. I'm also going to touch on the acid startup. This is something we didn't go into too much on the previous podcast, where I talked to Bob Lowry about different startup methods. And in today's podcast, we're going to cover a lot of different problems you'll have when starting up a pool. I think it's important to learn the startup procedure because there's a lot of business to be had out there in the industry from builders. They're looking for a good startup person in your area. In fact, if you can find a builder doing a lot of pools and building a lot of pools in your area and you decide to be the startup person, you can definitely get a lot of new accounts with brand new equipment, brand new plaster or pebble tech, of course, and really build up your pool route rapidly. So it's essential that you know how to start up pools because this is a great way to build accounts for your service. And it's also a great skill to know when you have a customer that may want to remodel their pool and need someone to start that pool up after the remodel. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support. From me, I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. And one of the big issues with a startup with a plaster or quartz pool is the plaster dust. And that's why the hot startup is kind of popular in California because we have a lot of quartz surfaces that are built. Right. And you can actually see the plaster dust just evaporating when you 4 gallons of acid in there. And so the hot startup is popular, but again, it may not be, if you're a rookie, you should be doing the hot startup. It's kind of complicated. Yeah. But it does get rid of the dust. So the plaster dust is an issue, especially with a traditional startup. What are some of the ways that you can, besides the hot startup, that you can do to kind of minimize that plaster dust?
Well, of course, hot startup refers to the fact that you're going to put a lot of acid in the pool. And some of the methods actually pull the pH down to about probably 4 or 4.5 in the pool. And the purpose of it, of course, is to dissolve part of the surface that they left on top of the aggregate. So they want to get rid of that by dissolving it. But plaster dust also dissolves when the pH is a little bit low. So if we can make the water a little corrosive, it will dissolve the plaster dust. And that's the idea, is that, first of all, if there's a lot of calcium already in the water, we don't get so much calcium dust. But lowering the pH or adding some acid also dissolves some of the calcium. So it keeps it as an ion. So it's probably better to do that. Keeping the pH on the low side prevents scale from forming and therefore prevents the precipitation of calcium.
What would be the lowest pH you would recommend in a startup, to reduce the plaster dust?
Well, I probably wouldn't get much below 7. 7.2 maybe. 7 probably is the outside I would go. I wouldn't go below.
And there's a lot of precautions when you have a new plaster surface. For instance, I've seen builders not put a towel around the hose before in the bottom of the pool. People vacuuming the pool too early. What are some of the cautions with a new plaster surface? Because I think plaster is still the #1 surface type that people have installed in their backyards.
Right. Well, we use plaster. I've been building pools for, 100 years or whatever. And if there was a perfect surface, we'd probably all be using it. And the fact of the matter is, plaster is probably the best surface that we've been able to figure out. There is aggregate and quartz, and maybe quartz is perhaps the best right now, but not everybody can afford a quartz pool. But at any rate, we keep trying to make it better, but plaster seems to be a pretty good thing. But some of the things you want to be very careful about doing is, as the pool is filling, you want to make sure that hose does not have any metal or anything on the end of it, or even any rubber that's got any sharp edges or anything, because the hose can, quite frankly, move around. As the hose is whipping around in the pool, it's making a streak in that plaster. The plaster is real susceptible to practically anything, at least for a few days, till it starts to hydrate and cure. We don't want to get any wheels on it. We have a lot of people. The homeowner goes, "Oh, I didn't want to leave the water on overnight. I was afraid it might overfill the pool." It's going to take you 24 to 48 hours to fill the pool. And even if it did overfill, it's not going to overfill by that much. You're not wasting water. So it's important, because if you stop the fill and then turn it back on in 8 hours or whatever, you're going to have a line in the pool where you stopped, and it's permanent. It's not something that can be removed. It's there forever. Mm-hmm. So you cannot stop a pool once it starts to be filled up. You cannot do that. You can't use anything with wheels on it for at least 2 weeks, maybe a month. That kind of depends, but you can't use anything with wheels on it. So you can't put a robotic cleaner in there. You can't use a vacuum with wheels on it. You can't do any of that stuff for about a month. Anything that you do like that is going to mess up the surface.
Yeah, and I've seen like dogs step into like a little beach entry and they leave their footprints there forever. People too.
Yeah, and they're anxious to get into it, and that's the worst part. When somebody spends $100,000 on a pool, it gets filled up. Then somebody starts clearing the water, and it looks so good they want to dive in, and it's not ready yet. They got to wait a few days, and they don't want to do it.
So last thing is one thing I get a lot of is customers. The builder will build the pool, and this is very common here in California and all across the country too. They'll build the pool. They'll just basically start the hose, fill it up, and then they'll walk away, and the customer just has the pool filling with water.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I get an email saying, "Hey, the builder built the pool, they filled it, and now everything's all messed up because there was no startup. What can I do to correct it?" And after the fact, is there anything you can do to fix plaster dust or problems with the surface, things like that, without a proper startup?
There's so many things that can go wrong if you don't do a startup and at least start paying attention to typical water conditions. But there's not too much you can do about reversing it. Of course, you can, if you have still some plaster dust, you can add, you can acidify the pool a little bit and dissolve some of that stuff back in. Actually, plaster dust, if you can see it, it can be filtered. But many pools today are being built with a sand filter, and a sand filter is not a very good filter for filtering out plaster dust. Cartridges are, and D for sure is, but it may be that you can use a clarifier, not the alum type that flocks, but the other type that's an organic polymer. It can help to remove some of the plaster dust. You really want to get the pool balanced as quick as you can balance it and get to the typical normal levels. I know that many stores use ranges for pH and alkalinity and so on. And some years ago, I created a method of targets that just has a single number. And it seems like people are using a single number helps them understand what's wrong with their water much easier because they're either on target or they're off, and it doesn't give them a broad range. And so I would rather use targets, but get the pool into the recommended ranges as quick as you can. And if there's anything in there that's a potential stain causer, you have to do something with that. Even if it's after the fact, get a complete water test. Find out if you've got any metals in there. Find out if you've got low calcium or high calcium and deal with that right away. So those are things you have to deal with right away. You can start, if it's been 2 weeks, you can probably start to do some vacuuming and maybe put a robotic cleaner in and start getting some of the stuff out of there. If there's any stains, you may want to use some Jack's Magic or some of the products from Natural Chemistry. They have some good stain removal products, and get those stains off of there as soon as you can. Also, the see you later, believe it or not, you get a stain because metals have reached their saturation point in the water. And if you remove some of the metal from the water, there's more room in the water to hold more metal. And so by removing some metal from the water, you can actually remove a stain from the wall because the stain can redissolve back into the water. There's now more room for that metal to redissolve into the water. But that only happens when you remove it with a thing like the see you later or a filter, because using a sequestering agent doesn't remove it, so it doesn't change the saturation.
Yeah, well, one product that I like to use for plaster dust is the Easy Care Butec. I don't know if you've used that product or heard of it, but it gets behind the scale and kind of lifts it off, and it seems to be really effective. In testing, they also make a product called Scale Tech, which is like the similar product to that, and I found that to be pretty effective in testing. So there are products out there you can probably find aftermarket to kind of get the pool back, but definitely, yes. I think the key is to have the startup done correctly in the beginning, right?
As a homeowner, if the builder walks away from the pool, I would have to say, please go spend the money, call somebody that's a professional and get the pool started up correctly. You spend $100,000 on it, and it's like spending $100,000 on a car and then not putting any oil in it. It's not the right way to do it.
So I hope you found that podcast helpful. I think the mystery of startups is one of the things that stops people from doing them. It's really easy once you know that you just have to be really focused on the balance of the pool water, balancing the pool water initially for the first week or two. I think is super critical, and then logging everything in case there's a problem. I think if anyone questions the chemistry of the pool, having a record or a log of what you added to the pool and what the chemistry readings were that day is extremely important when you do a startup. Other than that, it's just brushing the pool, answering questions for the client, and of course keeping everyone out of the pool until the plaster has cured. Definitely, that's one of the hardest things I think with the startup, is letting them know that, it's inviting, it looks great, but you can't jump in that pool. It's going to ruin the plaster. And if you're looking for the first part of this where we talked about different startup methods, you can find that by, of course, subscribing to my YouTube channel. Every Monday through Friday, there's a new podcast that I put up here. And if you wanted to find specific episodes, you go to my website, swimmingprolearning.com, and on the banner, there's a podcast icon. Click on that, and there'll be a drop-down menu with over 1,700 podcasts for you to listen to at your leisure. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.